For 3 years, I lived with the pain of losing my son. They told me it was an accident, that he slipped, hit his head, and never woke up. I believed it because why wouldn't I? He was my boy, my only child. But last week, something strange happened. My daughter-in-law threw out an old baby blanket I knitted for my granddaughter. I don't know why, but something in me said, pick it up. And when I did, I felt something hard sewn inside the stitching. It was a phone. A phone my son hid. When I turned it on, my whole world broke. I saw things no mother should ever see. Everything I thought I knew about my son's death was a lie. If you're watching this, don't go anywhere, because the truth inside that phone will leave you speechless. My name is Maribel, and I am 69 years old. I have lived long enough to know that some days change everything, and I did not see this one coming. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I saw Brianna throwing things away. I was visiting to pick up some of Clara's things that she had left at her mother's house, and I happened to look out the kitchen window just as my daughter-in-law was emptying a large trash bag into the bin by the back fence. I saw the blue blanket tumbling into the garbage among coffee grounds and old newspaper and broken things. That blanket. The one I had knitted for my granddaughter when she was born. The one I had spent 3 weeks making, every single stitch done by my own hands with love. My son Daniel's wife had no right to throw it away like that. No right at all. I did not plan what happened next. My legs just carried me outside, and I fished the blanket out of the trash before Brianna could close the lid. My hands were shaking a little as I pulled it out and shook the garbage off it. Brianna came around the corner of the house and looked at me with those cold eyes of hers. Even now, I wonder how I did not see the truth in those eyes sooner. How I did not recognize that something was very wrong about her. "What are you doing?" she asked me, her voice sharp and annoyed. "This is Clara's," I said, holding the blanket close to my chest. "I made this for her. It has value. It has meaning. Why would you throw it away?" Brianna just shrugged and walked back inside the house without saying anything else. I stood there holding that damp, dirty blanket, and something inside me said to check it. I cannot explain where that feeling came from. It was not a thought exactly. It was more like an instinct. My mother had always told me to trust my instincts. My gut knows things before my mind does, she used to say. I had not held that blanket in 3 years. It had been in Brianna's house the whole time, used to wrap Clara when she was a baby, and then put away and forgotten. But as I held it, my fingers felt something inside. Something hard. Something that did not belong in a baby blanket. My heart started beating faster. I waited until I got home. I did not want to examine it in Brianna's house, where she might see me. I waited until I was safely in my own living room with the door locked. My hands were shaking when I looked at the blanket under the good light of my table lamp. I found a small seam that had been sewn shut with careful, precise stitches. It was done professionally, not like a repair that a desperate person would make. Like someone had cut the blanket open on purpose and then sewn it back closed to hide something inside. I took out my small scissors and cut the thread very carefully. Inside was a phone. A phone that had been hidden inside my granddaughter's blanket for 3 years. A phone that nobody knew about. A phone that had been waiting for someone to find it. My heart started beating very fast. I knew this phone. I had seen Daniel with a phone like this once. It was a special phone, one he said he used only for work sometimes. Something in my chest told me that this phone meant something very important. Something that changed everything. I tried to unlock it. My hands were steady, even though my heart was not. The first code I attempted was Daniel's birthday. Month, day, year. It worked on the first try. The phone opened like it had been waiting for someone who loved him to find it. What I found inside destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. There were photographs. Daniel and Brianna in better times, yes, but also something else. Photos of Brianna with a man I had never seen before. A man with a thin face and light blue eyes. In some photos they were at restaurants. In others they were in what looked like a hotel room. The dates on the photos were stamped clearly. In one photo, Brianna was wearing a green dress that I recognized, the one she wore to Christmas that year. Daniel was still alive then. He was still alive, and she was somewhere with this other man. They were together while Daniel was alive. There were messages. Text messages between Brianna and this man whose name was Trent. I read them sitting at my kitchen table, and with each message, I felt like the world was shifting under my feet. Moving. Changing. Breaking apart. He doesn't suspect anything, one message said. How much longer? Another said. The insurance money will be enough, a third said. We can go anywhere. Will you really leave him? Trent had written. Yes. But it has to look like an accident. It has to look natural, Brianna had written back. Then there was a video file. I did not want to watch it, but I knew I had to. I pressed play. Brianna and Trent were in a car, parked somewhere I did not recognize. Trent was holding a camera and filming Brianna. She was talking about the plan. She was talking about how to make it look like an accident. She was talking about the railing on the stairs where Daniel worked. She was talking about timing and insurance money and a man named Trent who would help her. She was smiling. She looked happy. We need to do it on a Tuesday, she said to the camera. Fewer people around. Maybe at lunchtime. You wait by the water fountain. I'll come up from behind. We'll make sure he falls hard. Make sure there's no doubt. The police won't look too hard if it looks obvious. Trent asked her if she was sure. I've never been more sure about anything, Brianna said. He's in the way. And after this, we'll be free. There was a note. A handwritten note that had been stored in the phone's photos. It was in Brianna's handwriting. I knew her handwriting very well. I had seen it on birthday cards she sent to me and on notes about Clara's schedule. The note listed steps. It was organized like a checklist. Step 1. Make sure he takes the stairs that day. Step 2. Create the opening at the railing. Step 3. Timing is everything. Step 4. Let gravity do the work. Step 5. Grief-stricken widow. Step 6. Collect insurance. Step 7. New life with Trent. I sat in my chair for a very long time. I did not move. I did not cry. I just sat there holding the phone in my hands, reading the words over and over again. Daniel had fallen down the stairs at his office building 3 years ago. It was called an accident. The police investigated, and they found nothing wrong. They said the railing was secure. They said he must have tripped. They closed the case very quickly. We buried my son. Brianna wore black to the funeral and cried. I held her hand and told her everything would be okay. I helped her raise Clara. I watched her collect the insurance money. The check was for $1 million. I had believed her every single day for 3 years. I had believed that my son was clumsy and unlucky. I had believed in an accident. My son did not fall. My son had been pushed. My son had been murdered by his own wife. I looked at the phone again. My hands were steady now. I picked up my own phone, and I dialed the one number that felt right to call. I called my neighbor Helen. Helen had been my best friend for 15 years. Helen had a logical mind and a strong heart. She was a woman who could think clearly even when everything was falling apart. Helen answered on the second ring. Helen, I said, and my voice sounded like a stranger's voice. I need you to come over right now. I have found something. Something that changes everything about my life. Everything about my family. Please come now. Helen arrived at my house within 10 minutes. She was still wearing her gardening gloves when she came through the front door. She had been pulling weeds in her garden when I called. I showed her everything without saying a word. I showed her the phone. I showed her the messages. I showed her the video. I showed her the note with the steps written out so clearly. Helen sat down very slowly on my sofa. She did not say anything for a long time. She just read and looked and processed what she was seeing. We need to be careful, she finally said. Her voice was quiet and serious. We need to be very careful and very smart. This is not a small thing, Maribel. This is a crime. A terrible crime. We need to handle this exactly right, or we might ruin everything. Helen worked as an accountant before she retired. She understood how to look at information and understand what it meant. She understood how to trace things. She understood systems and records and documentation. We spent the rest of that day and all through the evening studying the phone. We wrote down names. We wrote down dates. We wrote down amounts of money mentioned in messages. We compared the dates in the messages with what we knew about when things had happened in Daniel's life. We made a timeline. We saw it clearly now. It all connected. The next morning, Helen came to my house with her laptop computer. She had done something I had not thought to do. She had searched for the man in the photographs. It took her 3 hours of patient searching through different websites and social media pages, but she found him. His name really was Trent Dawson. He had a social media page that was public. In the photos on his page, he looked younger and healthier than in Brianna's photos. There were more recent images. There were pictures of him with different women at different times. There were pictures of him at bars and concerts and restaurants. He looked like someone who moved from person to person without staying anywhere very long. Helen showed me everything. Men like this, Helen said, they are tools. They don't think very carefully about what they're doing. Brianna used him. She found someone weak and easy to manipulate. He may not have even understood what he was part of. Not really. Not until it was done. Helen had another idea. She suggested we visit Brianna's house. She said we could pretend I just wanted to see Clara, and while I kept Brianna talking in the living room, Helen could look around carefully. I did not like the idea at first. It felt wrong to sneak around someone's house like thieves. It felt disloyal somehow, even though I knew what Brianna had done. But I thought of Daniel. I thought of the note that listed the steps. I thought of my granddaughter growing up with a murder. I thought of the insurance money that Brianna had collected and used to live a nice life while my son was dead. I agreed. We went on a Friday afternoon. Brianna seemed happy to see me. She made tea in her nice kitchen. She called Clara to come say hello to her grandmother. Clara was 6 years old then. She had Daniel's dark hair and Brianna's sharp cheekbones. I held her, and I cried a little, though I tried not to let anyone see. I told her I loved her very much. I held her like I might never let her go. Helen said she needed to use the bathroom and disappeared into the back of the house. She did not come back right away. I kept Brianna talking. I asked about her job. She worked at a nursing home, taking care of elderly people who could not take care of themselves. She told me about some of the patients. She seemed proud of her work. She talked about how much she cared for them. I wanted to scream at her, but I stayed calm and drank my tea and listened to her lies. When Helen finally came back, she looked normal, but I could see something in her eyes, a tightness around her mouth. She had found something. We left an hour later. In Helen's car, I asked her what she had seen. Life insurance documents, Helen said. On Daniel. Brianna is listed as the only beneficiary. For $1 million. She collected that money, Maribel. The check cleared 3 months after his death. I saw the deposit in her bank records. I found statements she left on the desk in their bedroom. Helen had also found other bank documents. Large transfers from Brianna's account to a man named Trent Dawson. $50,000 over the course of 6 months before Daniel died. $5,000 more after he was dead. She paid him, I said. It was not a question. I think so, Helen said. I think she paid him to help her. I think she paid him to be part of it. But there was something else. Something that made it even worse. Helen had found a birth certificate. It was for Clara, and I thought I knew what it would say. I thought it would say that Brianna Williamson and Daniel Williamson were the parents. I was wrong. The certificate was very old and very faded. It listed 2 different parents. The mother was listed as Naomi Reyes. The father was listed as unknown. The date of birth was 2 years before Clara had supposedly been born. She stole this baby, Helen said quietly. Brianna did not give birth to Clara. Clara is not her daughter. Clara is someone else's daughter. I told Helen to drive me to the library. We spent the entire afternoon there looking at old newspaper articles on the computers. We found it in the archives. A woman named Naomi Reyes had gone missing 3 years ago. She was a young mother, only 23 years old. She had disappeared from a parking lot near the city center on a Tuesday afternoon. The police had searched for her. Her family had been terrified. 2 months later, her body was found in a storage unit that someone had rented. She had severe head trauma. The case went unsolved for years. Nobody was ever arrested. There was no mention of her baby. There was no mention of anyone knowing what happened to her child. The dates matched everything perfectly. Naomi had gone missing 3 weeks after Daniel died. Naomi's death had never been connected to Daniel's death because the police had decided his was an accident. They were different cases, different deaths, different people, but they were connected. They were all connected. I called Helen that night and asked her to help me do something that scared me very much. I asked her to help me go to the police. We took everything to the police station on a Monday morning. I took Daniel's phone. I took photographs I had printed from the phone. I took Helen's notes about what she had found at Brianna's house. I took the information about Naomi Reyes. I took copies of the birth certificate. I took newspaper articles about Naomi's disappearance and death. I walked in there feeling very old and very tired and very afraid. A detective named Mason Clark listened to everything. He was a serious man with gray in his hair and kind eyes. He wore a brown jacket that had seen a lot of wear. He did not interrupt me while I talked. He took notes in a small book. He looked at the phone very carefully. He looked at the documents. He looked at me. When I finished talking, he sat back in his chair and took a long breath. "Mrs. Maribel," he said, "I reopened your son's case a year ago because I never felt right about it. I had questions about the circumstances of his death. I had questions about the railing and the timeline. But I had no evidence. I had nothing to go on. This changes things. This changes everything." Detective Clark told us to go home and not to tell anyone what we had done. He said they would handle it quietly and carefully. He said they would bring in another team to look at Naomi Reyes's death. He said they would investigate whether these 2 deaths were connected. He said we had done the right thing by coming to him. What happened next took weeks. Many weeks. The police watched Brianna carefully. They watched Trent. They gathered information slowly and carefully, like people collecting pieces of a puzzle. They got warrants to look at bank records. They interviewed people at Brianna's work. They interviewed people at Daniel's work. Helen and I waited at home and did not sleep very well during that time. We thought about Clara. We wondered what would happen to her. Detective Clark called me with updates. They had found Trent and questioned him. At first, he denied everything. He said he did not know Brianna very well. He said he had never met Daniel. Then the police told him they had evidence. They told him they had messages and videos. Trent asked for a lawyer. Then Trent changed his mind and agreed to talk without a lawyer present. He told them everything. He said Brianna had lied about being pregnant. He said Brianna had a detailed plan to get rid of Daniel and steal a baby and live a new life with insurance money. He said he had helped because Brianna had promised him money and a share of a new life. He said he was sorry. He said he did not know it would turn out like this. He said Brianna had told him that she went to the place where Naomi Reyes lived and pretended to be a social worker doing a home visit. He said Naomi had trusted her because she looked official and spoke calmly. He said Brianna had hit Naomi in the head with a hammer because Naomi had started to get suspicious about who Brianna really was. He said Brianna had taken the baby and left Naomi there bleeding. He said Brianna had made it look like a robbery or a random attack. A second autopsy was performed on Daniel's body. The examiner found bruises on his wrists and ankles. These bruises showed that he had been restrained before he fell. Someone had held him down. Someone had tied him up. Someone had made sure he fell down those stairs. Someone had made it look like an accident when it was not an accident at all. The police also looked into other patients at the nursing home where Brianna worked. They found records showing that several elderly people under her care had suffered sudden cardiac arrests. People who had no history of heart problems. People who had been very healthy the day before. The police got permission from the families to investigate further. They found that Brianna had access to medications that could cause heart problems. They found records showing she had stolen these medications from the nursing home. They found that money from some of these patients' estates had been transferred to Brianna's account through different methods. Money that should have gone to their families or their charities. Money that Brianna had stolen. I was angry and sad and horrified all at the same time. I had let this woman into my life. I had trusted her with my son. I had trusted her with my granddaughter. I had believed her tears at my son's funeral. I had held her while she cried. Helen held my hand during all of this. She did not let me fall apart, but she also did not tell me not to feel what I was feeling. She let me be angry. She let me be sad. It happened on a Tuesday. Brianna tried to take Clara and leave the country. The police received a tip that she had purchased plane tickets to Brazil under false names. She had purchased forged passports for herself and Clara. There was a bag full of cash. She had withdrawn it from accounts slowly over weeks, so it would not be noticed. The police stopped her at the airport terminal. They arrested her right there with Clara watching from behind a security gate. Clara did not understand what was happening. She was confused and scared. Clara was placed with social services. I was allowed to see her, but she could not stay with me yet. The court had to complete its checks to make sure everything was safe. I brought her stuffed animals and books. I brought her toys. I told her that Grandma loved her and that everything would be okay. She was too young to understand what had happened. She just knew that her mother was gone. She had questions that I did not know how to answer. During the interrogation, Brianna refused to speak. She sat there in a gray room with a lawyer, and she did not say a single word. Not one word. She just looked at the detective with those cold eyes. But Trent started talking.
He talked and talked.
He told the police everything he knew. He told them how Brianna had pretended to be pregnant for months. She had worn padding under her clothes. She had told everyone she was expecting. She had told them the baby was due in 3 months. Then suddenly, she said the baby came early. She said Clara had been born at home without a doctor. Nobody questioned it. Nobody asked to see hospital records. Brianna had stolen Naomi's baby and told everyone it was hers. She had lied so easily. Trent explained that he and Brianna had been seeing each other for a year before Daniel died. Brianna had told him that Daniel was abusive. She had told him that Daniel did not want the baby. She had told him that Daniel was controlling and mean. None of it was true. None of it was real. But Trent had believed her. She had told him that if they got rid of Daniel and took the insurance money, they could run away together and start fresh. They could go somewhere warm and live a nice life. Trent said he was stupid and angry, and he agreed to help. He said Brianna told him what to do. Every step. Every detail. He said Brianna told him to wait by the stairs at Daniel's office building on a Tuesday at lunchtime. He said when Daniel came down the hallway, Trent blocked his path and pretended to be a delivery man looking for a signature. While Daniel was confused and polite, Brianna came up from behind and hit him with something hard. Trent said it happened so fast. He said there was blood. He said he helped her tie Daniel's wrists and ankles. He said they pushed him down the stairs. He said they left him there. They made it look like he had fallen. They made it look like an accident. When Naomi Reyes started to suspect something was wrong, Brianna had driven to her house. Brianna had put on professional clothes. She had told Naomi she was from the city social services and needed to do a welfare check on the baby. Naomi had believed her because Brianna was convincing. Naomi had opened her door and let her inside. Brianna had hit her over the head with a hammer. She had taken the baby and left Naomi there. Naomi had died alone in her apartment. The police opened a safe in Brianna's bedroom wall. Inside were recordings and written notes. Brianna had documented her crimes. She had written down the names of elderly patients she planned to target. She had written how much money they had. She had written about their families. She had recordings of her practicing what she would say to families. She had notes about which medications would be hardest to detect. She had planned to kill 7 more people. She had calculated how much money she could steal from each one. She had written it all down like it was a business plan, like it was a reasonable thing to do. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I sat in the courtroom every single day. I sat behind the prosecutor's table. I watched Brianna sit at the defense table in different outfits that her lawyer chose for her. Professional clothes that made her look confident. Sad clothes that made her look like a victim. Clothes that made her look innocent. But I knew better now. I had seen inside her phone. I had read her notes. I had listened to her voice on those recordings. I knew what she had done. The prosecutors presented everything piece by piece. They showed the phone and its contents to the jury. They played the video of Brianna explaining her plan. They read the messages out loud. The courtroom was silent. People in the jury looked at Brianna with disgust. They looked at me with sympathy. The forensic evidence was presented next. The bruises on Daniel's wrists and ankles. The angle of the fall that showed he could not have fallen naturally. The expert witness who explained that the injuries indicated he had been held by someone and pushed. The toxicology reports that showed Naomi had substances in her system that came from medications Brianna had access to at the nursing home. They brought in witnesses. People who worked at Daniel's office said they saw a man they did not recognize near the stairs that morning. People who knew Naomi said she had been worried about a social worker who seemed strange. Her roommate said Naomi had a bad feeling about this woman. She had told her roommate that something did not feel right. Trent testified. He looked small and weak in the witness stand. He looked like a man who had finally understood the terrible thing he had done. He talked about how Brianna had manipulated him. He cried when he talked about Daniel. He cried when he talked about Naomi. He cried when he talked about Clara, who should have known her real mother. The prosecutors asked him hard questions. The defense asked him questions too, trying to make him look like the real criminal. Trying to make him look like the mastermind. But his story did not change. He knew he was going to prison. He was cooperating because he had finally understood what he had done, and he could not live with it anymore. Expert witnesses testified about the poisonings. They explained how Brianna had slowly increased medications in elderly patients, 4 lines and medications. They explained how she had made their deaths look natural. They explained that she had done this at least 4 times successfully before the police stopped her. They showed how she had stolen medication by signing out more than patients needed. On the last day of the trial, the prosecutors summarized their case. They walked through the evidence one more time. They talked about Daniel and what a good man he was. They talked about Naomi and what a young life had been wasted. They talked about Clara and the trauma she had experienced. They talked about the elderly people who died when they should have lived. The judge gave instructions to the jury. They went to the deliberation room to decide whether Brianna was guilty or not guilty. I waited in the hallway with Helen. We did not talk very much. Helen held my hand. We sat in the hallway and we waited. The jury came back after 5 hours. They had reached a verdict. The judge asked Brianna to stand. She stood with no expression on her face. The judge asked the jury if they had reached a verdict. They said yes. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Daniel Williamson, they found her guilty. On the count of first-degree murder in the death of Naomi Reyes, they found her guilty. On the counts of 3 additional murders of elderly patients at the nursing home, they found her guilty. On the counts of attempted murders of 2 other patients, they found her guilty. 6 times guilty. 6 times guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 6 life sentences. She would die in prison. She would never leave. I did not feel happy. I felt relief and sadness at the same time. I felt like something very heavy had finally been put down, but now I was empty instead of full. 6 months after the trial ended, the court allowed me to take Clara as her permanent guardian. She would be my granddaughter in every way that mattered. She would be my daughter. I went to get her from the foster home where she had been staying. She was 7 years old now. She was thin and quiet. She had been through too much. She ran to me when I walked in and I held her, and I did not let go for a very long time. I brought her home to my house. I set up a bedroom for her. I painted the walls a soft yellow that she liked. I made sure she had books and toys and soft things. I put her in the school near my home. I went to every parent-teacher meeting. I made her favorite foods. I held her when she had nightmares. I told her that she was safe now. I told her that no one would ever hurt her again. I told her that she was loved. After a few months, she started calling me something different. She called me Mom Grandma. At first it made me cry. I would be making her lunch and she would say, "Mom Grandma, can I have peanut butter?" and I would cry a little. Then it made me smile. Each time she said it, I felt a small piece of my heart heal. I was not just her grandmother anymore. I was her mother. I was her family. I was her home. When Clara was older, when she was old enough to understand, I told her the truth about where she came from. I told her gently that her birth mother was a woman named Naomi, and that Naomi had loved her very much. I told her that Naomi had kept her safe for 2 years before Brianna took her. I told her that her father was a man named Daniel, and that Daniel had been my son, and that he had loved her too. I told her that Daniel had been excited to be a father. I told her that bad things had happened to both of them. I told her that none of it was her fault. I told her that she was innocent and pure, and that what happened was not because of anything she did. She cried, and I held her, and we got through it together. Clara grew up into a bright young woman. She had Daniel's kind heart and Naomi's strong mind. When she was in high school, she told me she wanted to study medicine. When I asked her why, she said she wanted to help children who had been through trauma. She wanted to make sure that other children did not have to suffer the way she had. She wanted to understand why people hurt each other and how to help people heal. She went to college and medical school. She worked hard and she did well. She is now a pediatric psychiatrist. She helps children every single day. She helps them understand their feelings and process their pain. Helen stayed by my side through all of it. We have grown even closer over the years. We take walks together, and we sit together, and we talk about life. She is my sister in everything but blood. She was there when I needed her most, and she never left. Brianna is still in prison. She will die in prison. She will never walk free again. Trent died in prison 5 years ago. His health failed, and nobody fought very hard to save him. Nobody cared enough. I keep Daniel's old blanket in a drawer in my bedroom. I do not take it out very often. Sometimes I hold it, and I remember my son. I remember him before Brianna. I remember him laughing and working hard and being kind to everyone. I remember him talking about becoming a father. I remember his dreams. I remember the sound of his voice. Clara has her own blanket now. It is a blanket I knitted for her when she turned 18. It is a blanket made with love, with no secrets hidden inside. It took me 4 months to knit it because my hands are older now. Every stitch was made thinking of her and hoping for her future. She keeps it on her bed. It is a reminder that she has a home. It is a reminder that she is loved. It is a reminder that she survived. The truth was inside that baby blanket all along. Sometimes truth hides in the most unexpected places. Sometimes truth waits patiently for someone brave enough to look for it. Sometimes love is the only thing that can bring it into the light. Sometimes a grandmother and her best friend are enough to change everything. I am 78 years old now. I have lived longer than I ever thought I would. I have seen terrible things, but I have also seen Clara grow into a wonderful person. I have seen that good can come from bad. I have seen that justice is possible. I have seen that family is not always the people you are born with. Family is the people who stay with you. Family is Helen. Family is Clara. Every morning I wake up, and I thank God that I found that blanket in the trash. I thank God that I trusted my instinct that day. I thank God that I had Helen to help me. I thank God that Clara is safe and happy and loved. I thank God that Daniel's death meant something, that his life meant something. I saw my daughter-in-law throw my granddaughter's baby blanket away. Then I looked inside, and I found the truth. The truth set my granddaughter free. The truth set us all free. I brought her home to my house. I set up a bedroom for her. I painted the walls a soft yellow that she liked. I made sure she had books and toys and soft things. I put her in the school near my home. I went to every parent-teacher meeting. I made her favorite foods. I held her when she had nightmares. I told her that she was safe now. I told her that no one would ever hurt her again. I told her that she was loved. After a few months, she started calling me something different. She called me Mom Grandma. At first it made me cry. I would be making her lunch and she would say, "Mom Grandma, can I have peanut butter?" And I would cry a little. Then it made me smile. Each time she said it, I felt a small piece of my heart heal. I was not just her grandmother anymore. I was her mother. I was her family. I was her home. When Clara was older, when she was old enough to understand, I told her the truth about where she came from. I told her gently that her birth mother was a woman named Naomi, and that Naomi had loved her very much. I told her that Naomi had kept her safe for 2 years before Brianna took her. I told her that her father was a man named Daniel, and that Daniel had been my son, and that he had loved her too. I told her that Daniel had been excited to be a father. I told her that bad things had happened to both of them. I told her that none of it was her fault. I told her that she was innocent and pure, and that what happened was not because of anything she did. She cried, and I held her, and we got through it together. Clara grew up into a bright young woman. She had Daniel's kind heart and Naomi's strong mind. When she was in high school, she told me she wanted to study medicine. When I asked her why, she said she wanted to help children who had been through trauma. She wanted to make sure that other children did not have to suffer the way she had. She wanted to understand why people hurt each other and how to help people heal. She went to college and medical school. She worked hard and she did well. She is now a pediatric psychiatrist. She helps children every single day. She helps them understand their feelings and process their pain. Helen stayed by my side through all of it. We have grown even closer over the years. We take walks together and we sit together and we talk about life. She is my sister in everything but blood. She was there when I needed her most and she never left. Brianna is still in prison. She will die in prison. She will never walk free again. Trent died in prison 5 years ago. His health failed, and nobody fought very hard to save him. Nobody cared enough. I keep Daniel's old blanket in a drawer in my bedroom. I do not take it out very often. Sometimes I hold it, and I remember my son. I remember him before Brianna. I remember him laughing and working hard and being kind to everyone. I remember him talking about becoming a father. I remember his dreams. I remember the sound of his voice. Clara has her own blanket now. It is a blanket I knitted for her when she turned 18. It is a blanket made with love, with no secrets hidden inside. It took me 4 months to knit it because my hands are older now. Every stitch was made thinking of her and hoping for her future. She keeps it on her bed. It is a reminder that she has a home. It is a reminder that she is loved. It is a reminder that she survived. The truth was inside that baby blanket all along. Sometimes truth hides in the most unexpected places. Sometimes truth waits patiently for someone brave enough to look for it. Sometimes love is the only thing that can bring it into the light. Sometimes a grandmother and her best friend are enough to change everything. I am 78 years old now. I have lived longer than I ever thought I would. I have seen terrible things, but I have also seen Clara grow into a wonderful person. I have seen that good can come from bad. I have seen that justice is possible. I have seen that family is not always the people you are born with. Family is the people who stay with you. Family is Helen. Family is Clara. Every morning I wake up And I thank God that I found that blanket in the trash. I thank God that I trusted my instinct that day. I thank God that I had Helen to help me. I thank God that Clara is safe and happy and loved. I thank God that Daniel's death meant something, that his life meant something. I saw my daughter-in-law throw my granddaughter's baby blanket away. Then I looked inside, and I found the truth. The truth set my granddaughter free. The truth set us all free.